Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. This is the City Council public hearing evening. I think I'll start out by saying I think it's Happy Mardi Gras, everybody. And we have tonight 4 public hearings. And just because I know that 52 of you are signed up for the 4th hearing, we'll get through the other 3, and then it'll be you. So there you go. Okay, so the first public hearing is an ordinance adopting hazardous substance user fees. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. In accordance with provisions of the Eugene City Charter and City Code, the city's Toxics Right to Know program is fully funded by fees assessed to local manufacturing businesses that are hazardous substance users. To support the program for FY13, the Toxic Board is recommending a fee of $79 per full-time equivalent employee employed by participating businesses in 2011, up to a maximum of $2,000 as provided by state law.
Okay, I'm going to open the hearing. No one has signed up to testify. I'm going to close the hearing. Thank you all. Okay, we're going to move on to the next two. The next one is a proposal to redesignate and rezone the Rexius site. City Manager?
This public hearing is for a proposal to amend the Metro Plan diagram and Eugene's zoning map for property commonly referred to as the Rexius site. This request would change the plan designation and zoning of the site from light-medium industrial to a combination of low-density residential, medium-density residential, and commercial. The area subject to this request includes 27.9 acres south of West 11th Avenue between Bailey Hill Road and Wallace Street. Consistency with the required approval criteria at Eugene Code 9.7730 and 9.8865 are addressed in the Planning Commission's findings found at Exhibit C of Attachment C. I will also note that the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of this request.
Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing, and those wishing to speak during this public hearing should have already submitted a completed request to speak form to the information desk. I'm now going to ask, do any councilors need to disclose any conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts? I don't see any. City Manager, you've introduced the topic, so we're ready to move on from there. So then it says, will you state the list of approval criteria, City Manager?
Actually, I'll have Steve Oakes do that for us, please.
Yes, the code sections were actually already mentioned by the city manager. They are the approval criteria at EC 9.77303 and EC 9.8865, which are generally the statewide planning goals and compliance with the Metro Plan and Refinement Plan.
Okay, and all right. I just wanted to say that they are limited here to pursuant to adopted city code. The City Council will limit our review to the evidence that was presented to the Planning Commission, along with any arguments about that evidence that are presented to us through written testimony or at this public hearing. Testimony presented must be directed toward the approval criteria or other criteria that the speaker believes to apply to the decision. The failure of anyone to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the City Council and parties an opportunity to respond will preclude appeal on that issue. The failure to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions or approval with sufficient specificity to allow the Council to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. The request to speak forms have been separated into 3 groups. However, there are not 3 groups, and speakers will be called in the following order: those in support, those with a neutral position, those opposed to the proposed order. Please give your name and address when you come to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. The timer and lights on the podium indicate the time you have to speak. A yellow light will come on when you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of the 3 minutes. So I'm going to, did I already open the? Yes. Okay, so first up is those in support, and in fact, that's all I have today. So we have Larry Reed up first and Rusty Rexius second.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Larry Reed. I'm a principal and manager with a company called JRH, Transportation and Land Use Planners here in Eugene, 4765 Village Plaza Loop, Eugene. JRH assisted the Rexius family with the Metro Plan land use designation, map amendment, and the concurrent rezoning application before you tonight. JRH conducted or had performed all the prerequisite studies before beginning the writing of this application. City staff and the city's planning commission, after review of the application, concurred with our analysis and findings as set forth in our application. Based upon the staff and the planning commission's unanimous recommendation, we believe the council should approve the application as submitted. With me tonight is Rusty Rexius, and that will explain this application from the owner's perspective, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Rusty Rexius.
Good evening, and thank you. 75 years ago, 1250 Bailey Hill Road was a great place for an industrial development. 75 years later, it's not. It seems to me that it makes a lot more sense that that ought to be something like a mixed-use development, which is precisely what we have proposed. If we take seriously Envision Eugene, the West Eugene Collaborative, every transportation, population, and economic model, and even as a member of the Sustainability Commission, this makes a lot of sense. So we've put a ton of time, a ton of energy, a great deal of money into working this out. I'm hoping tonight that you'll be able to help us take this first and important step to a long and arduous road, but one we're looking forward to. Thank you.
Thank you. So are there any here in a neutral position? I have none in front of me. See none. None in, opposed to this? Seeing none. Is there a staff response of any kind? No. Okay. Are there any questions that councilors wish to ask of staff? Alan? I mean, councilors are like...
Yeah, could we get provided, we've got the map of the area that's being redesignated, but could you give us a map of the surrounding areas and their zoning? Include that in the map when this come back to us?
Yeah, we will do that.
And also at that time answer the question about whether or not the impacts on those surrounding, given these changes or not changes. The one in particular I'm interested in is the retaining the existing industrial use in that 3.55 acres, which appears to be adjacent to R1 and R2 zoning. And that doesn't happen very often in our city. And I'm wondering if that's really a good idea to keep that industrial zoning. I know, and what the existing uses are there, and whether or not we can change that zoning to a different zoning and grandfather in what's already there, and what the impacts of that be on the existing uses.
Okay, we can provide that information to you prior to deliberations.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, so at this time, we normally close the public hearing in the public record. Is there any counselor who wishes to hold the record open for written testimony or to continue the hearing to another time? See none. So,
Mayor, does my request make...
you'll still get that information.
That doesn't have any impact on keeping the record open, does it?
Correct. We have that information, so we can just provide that to you then.
Okay. So I'm going to, the public hearing and record are closed. We're going to move on to the next item. So the next one is an ordinance concerning permitted overnight sleeping. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. On December 20th, 2011, in order to facilitate the transition of the Occupy Eugene camp members, a temporary exception to the provisions contained in Eugene Code 4.816 concerning overnight camping was granted to allow overnight sleeping in tents at sites normally reserved for legal overnight camping, car camping. Specifically, the amendment expands the definition of vehicles to include tents, strictly for the purpose of legal overnight car camping on permitted sites. Tents are subject to the provisions of Code 4.816 and are treated as vehicles in permitted sites. This amendment is due to sunset on April 15th, 2012. This item is scheduled for a public hearing only. Following the receipt of all testimony, I will make a recommendation to be included in the council packet for action on March 12th, 2012.
Thank you, City Manager. I'm going to open the public hearing, and those wishing to speak during the public hearing must submit a completed request to speak form, which they have. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward, if known. You'll have 3 minutes to comment. There are lights on the podium. The yellow light indicates you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes, and we have 10 people signed up for this particular hearing. Donna Riddle is up first, followed by Irene Cardenas.
Donna Riddle, 1238 Crest Drive. My mailbox is in the city. I'm not. I support making the tent camping, the equivalent of car camping, permanent, although I don't think it goes far enough. I think it's time that the city of Eugene decriminalize sleeping for people who are houseless, and I really hope that you will do that. And I'm still waiting to see where the wet bed facility is for people this winter.
Irene Cardenas is next, followed by Randy Kane.
Hi, I'm Irene Cardenas. I've lived in different areas in Eugene, including at the Occupy Camp, at the Mission. I've camped in the forest. And I think it's good to have more opportunities for the homeless to be able to sleep in tents where they can be protected from the rain. I handed out some handouts summarizing quotes from Tent Cities in America from Homeless Coalition, or is it nationalhomeless.org, and that shows how cities along the Pacific Coast have successfully created tent cities for the homeless. And I ran out, but I'll have more Thursday at 8:30 a.m. for the Mayor's Task Force on Homelessness at the St. Mary's Building. Living in nature in a tent can be very healthy for many people who have been in stress situations in their life. I have a handout on citing quotes from Ecotherapy, which I got from the library, Healing with Nature in Mind, copyright 2009. Research consistently supports the connection between getting active outside and improved psychological health. Gardening outside has been effective in curtailing stress and obesity, treating alcohol addiction and substance abuse. Patients diagnosed with schizophrenia, anxiety, affective disorders, and personality disorders showed significant improvement. Green outdoor spaces relieve the symptoms of attention deficit disorders. Also, where people can have their pets, including visits with a dog, can increase vitality, emotional balance, help people recover from heart disease, probably the number one killer, stress. So, also, it's when people have to go through social services to get a tent site, lots of times social services are engaged in diagnosing people as mentally disordered. And there's a lot of activists that are talking about how harmful it is to give people diagnoses, because actually when people do campaigns to destigmatize mental illness, it actually increases stigma, and people don't connect to the whole of that person's experience and join in that harmonious oneness with that person, which brings health. And there's even 8,000 mental health professionals who have signed a petition to protest the upcoming Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5 being released May 5th. And I have a pamphlet. So it'd be nice where the homeless could camp, where they could get all kinds of healthy mental activities like meditation, gardening. Thank you.
Randy Kane is next, followed by Terrell Purvis. Randy Kane?
Good evening. Actually, my comments kind of pick up.
Would you just introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Randy Kane, 1236 West 13th Avenue. I would like to, well, start by picking up where she left off. I just read the ordinance for the first time this evening. Something I would like to add from my own experiences as a peacekeeper in the Occupy movement and the nights I was able to spend all night out there in the camp was one of the things that were successful as long as we were, was the fact that many of the people in the camp were made to feel as if they were participating in a community. By making choices for that community, and they felt like they were the decision-making body of the community. And the fact that they were was a big part of why we were successful as long as we were. I know a lot of the different places who have that have adopted these policies before have not made that community connection or made the people feel as if they were a community. They were more talked at than talked to or talked with. I would really appreciate it if in hopes that you would pass this kind of legislation, that you would take that into consideration and come up with something that builds a community within the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Terrell Purvis is next, followed by Sabra Merecroft.
Good evening. My name is Terrell Purvis. I reside in Mr. Polling's ward. I come to you because as part of Occupy has ended and we're trying to provide out these outreach services to the individuals that were Occupy, what we're finding is if we have permanent sites like this where they could camp and be, that it's easier for us to provide the services to them because we're able to find them. And that is a big problem within the city, is that once we scatter them out, it's hard to find them and connect them to those resources. So that if we can make this happen with the camping, we'd have a place to go. And that's a place to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Sabra Merecroft is next, followed by John Monroe.
Hello, I'm Sabra Marcroft, and I reside in Andrea Ortiz's ward, 954 West 3rd. When people don't have a legal place to sleep, they lose their self-respect. And when they lose their self-respect, they're much more likely to misbehave. And when people are not respected, we are much more likely to misbehave towards them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John Monroe is next, followed by Ali Valkyrie.
Hello, my name is John Monroe, 1760 Olive Street, Ward number 1. I think this tent camping ordinance is an excellent move in the right direction, and I applaud the city in taking these steps and thinking through the implications of how we're going to address the homeless situation. And I only wanted to bring up 2 points that I think could make this ordinance even stronger. First off, there's a provision that a parking lot can have no more than 3 vehicles or tents. And I would suggest that perhaps the city manager and the city zoning work together to perhaps create a scale so that very large parking lots could permit more than 3 tents, and we could use a better amount of space in the city. The second point I'd like to address is a provision that permits the city to require any property owner to work under a supervised program either by the city or by one of its agents. And I would like to see an increased number of conditions on what actually enables the city to make that requirement. I'd like to see whether there are public safety issues that would need to be brought up or any kind of zoning issues first, so that the city would have conditions it would have to meet first before requiring anything from property owners. It seems like in order to maintain the sovereignty of individual property and to enable owners to use it to their discretion, they should be allowed to have tent or vehicle camping without having direct supervision unless there is a specific threat to public safety or a specific issue brought up by zoning or something else like that. So if we could see more flexibility for parking lot size in the first provision and more specificity for the city legitimacy of intervention by supervision in the second provision, I think this would be an even stronger ordinance. But once again, I think this is an excellent step in the right direction, and I thank everyone who's been involved in this.
Next is Ali Valkyrie, followed by Michael Kerrigan.
Hi, Ali Valkyrie, 1760 Olive Street, Ward 1. Obviously I feel this ordinance should be passed. I thank you. I'm sorry it took as long as it did to be passed. It saddens me, obviously, that it was only passed with the closing of the camp. But again, thank you for passing it. But let's not kid ourselves here. It does very little overall to solve the problem. Allowing tents, more tents, any tents, means nothing if there aren't enough sites available. And from what I understand, there currently aren't enough sites available, as is for people even without tents. There already is a waiting list. And, to me, that probably has to do with the direct supervision aspect. Why must the city have its hands in everything? Why can't we allow property owners to do what they wish with their property? Why can't we allow people to build communities with the consent of the property owner? Why do we rather have people sleeping in the streets, sleeping in alleyways? Why are we choosing the criminalization of sleeping over the rights of property owners to allow communities to be built on their property? Again, thank you, but why are we afraid of allowing people to build communities?
No. Thank you. Thanks. Michael Kerrigan's next. Ruth Demler after that.
My name is Michael Kerrigan. I live at 1439 West 4th Ave. I'm a proud resident of Ward 7. I support the program CALC, which is at 458 Blair, is part of the dispersed tent camping program. We have 2 tents now in the backyard at CALC, and it's working very well. We have one person, Roger, is a vet who from the Occupy camp who met with Kitty, and part of that was he just didn't know where he could go, and we found him a place, and it just worked really well. And there's another vet back there as well, so it's a great program. However, the city and St. Vinny's and others are having trouble finding sites. So I would, ask if the city manager could just ask city staff to work even harder to find more sites. We have a waiting list of 80 people. I see it at CALC. It's working for us, and it could work elsewhere in the city. We just need to work harder to find those sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Demler is next, followed by Joe Tyndall.
Ruth Demler, 1745 Fircrest. I thank you for having this passed before, and I encourage you to extend the ordinance. I think I just hope that we can find more spaces. My church had a car camp. We had a trailer put on the church property, and just time after time they did things that really helped us. We had a big serious plumbing problem come up, and they notified us right away so that we could take care of it. Time after time, we were really pleased to have someone there overseeing the property so that we didn't have any further break-ins. It's been really helpful to our organization to have had camping on our property. And I would like to encourage other churches and also other businesses. Businesses, too, have spoken up, saying that they have been having a much better safety record after they've had someone staying there overnight. So I hope that all of you will, and everyone who hears this, would encourage other businesses, because the waiting list isn't just 80. It's a great deal more than that. And for tent camping, I think we only have a few tents that have been put up. Maybe people don't understand the great need that we have in our community. Thank you very much.
And last is Joe Tyndall.
Hi, my name's Joe Tyndall, and Councilor Ortiz is my city councilor. I also support this, and it's good that this is being done. Thank you. But unfortunately, it's only a drop in the bucket. And my understanding is that there's currently about 60 camping places at a variety of sites, and that doesn't even come close to the roughly 10,000 people who are now homeless in Lane County. That represents about 3% of the population. We are likely to see that number grow given the condition of the economy. And so that's a drop in the bucket. Even by allowing tents, you still, all you do is you reduce the cost of a junk car, and which is good. It's kind of hard to save up to buy a car to get on the waiting list for one of these sites when downtown you're being ticketed for, sitting and leaning against buildings and crossing the street, and that, of course, cuts into the savings that you might do for a car. So we need a different solution besides this. And again, we're going to suggest that some form of a campsite would probably be about the best thing that the city could do. And that, if you remember how quiet the downtown was during the time when the homeless were living with Occupy, we could go back to that situation if we provided legal, safe place for these people to sleep at night. Thank you.
I'm going to close the public hearing and ask councilors any questions or comments. Councilor Zelenka?
I noticed that what the ordinance does is just extend what the definition of a vehicle is to include tents, but keeps the number and the locations and the types of locations at 3, either cars, campers, or trailers, and now includes tents, and also the type of locations that we have. So I have a couple of questions, if we could get them answered when this comes back to us. Can we get the history of why the number 3 is in here, and that conversation that occurred when we set this up? And I noticed, and the experience with that, and also I noticed that there has been a waiting list for a long time. I'd like to know more about that. And also, if we were to expand the types of sites, where would we expand them to? What kind of places could potentially be additional sites? And then finally, the impacts of supplementing the number as opposed to keeping it at 3, something like having 3 cars and 2 tents or something like that. So I'd like to know the impacts and the kind of pros and cons around expanding and supplementing the number at each particular site.
Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a question kind of along the same lines as Councilor Zelenka. I'm wondering if there are providers of sites now who would like to provide more people on their property. In other words, churches or whoever's doing this, that maybe has a bigger lot and maybe has space and maybe would like to provide, but can't because of the arbitrary number 3. I can see why that's done in certain sites because I know where they are, and it makes sense. That's about all that can fit in there. But I'm wondering, there might be some places some people that would be happy to invite more people to stay there.
Looks like Michael might have an answer for you.
Okay.
I can attempt an answer.
Okay.
Thanks for having me, Michael Wist, Community Development. As far as I understand the program, it was limited at 3 given to the number of size constraints, but also because these are managed sites, it was felt at the time that creating too many spots in one area could lead to a problem of management of the sites by the providers.
Okay, so possibly one solution there would be to maybe increase some funding to the providers so they could hire somebody else to, help provide the supervision.
Yeah, there was a funding increase this year for $50,000 to increase sites, and I did just meet today with their new staff who's helping support acquiring new sites and managing the sites that exist.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're ready to move on now. Did I close the hearing? I think I did. Okay, we're on to the last hearing, the one that most of you are here for, and that's an ordinance concerning the downtown public safety zone. I don't hear they come. The last I heard, we had 52 people signed up. 43? Yeah. Okay, 43. That's better than 52, I guess. Okay. Unless you... Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I'm going to open this public hearing. Ask the city manager to introduce the topic.
Thank you, Mayor. The downtown public safety zone will expire at the end of April unless the council votes to extend it. This is an opportunity for the city council to solicit community feedback on a proposal to extend the sunset date for the downtown public safety zone.
Thank you. Those wishing to speak during the public hearing must have submitted a complete request to speak form prior to the beginning of this public hearing. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. You'll have 3 minutes to comment. There are lights on the podium. The yellow light indicates you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. And I just want to compliment some of our prior speakers who didn't see the need to use all of their 3 minutes. Thank you all very much. Glad to hear from each and every one of you. So we're going to start with Mark Rust, and then Larry Leveroni is next.
Good evening, councilors, mayor, thank you. My name is Mark Rust. I'm a resident of Eugene, and I live in Ward 4. I grew up here in Eugene, and I'm now raising my kids here. I have fond memories of playing on the play structures downtown, and I want downtown to thrive and be an attractive place for my kids to grow up. I also work downtown, and I make it a point to walk through downtown nearly every day. I've personally witnessed open drug use and defecation in the open downtown. These actions are a blatant disregard for the law and create an environment that is not appealing to law-abiding citizens, businesses, let alone families and children. In your packet tonight, there are statistics that show marked improvement in the satisfaction of downtown by the public. I agree. I am more satisfied with downtown now than in the recent past, but it's not enough. Still, more than half of the citizens of the city are not satisfied with downtown. Eliminating the downtown safety zone now would undo any improvement that has been made in the safety and satisfaction of downtown and stifle more improvement. Last week, during your public comment period you held, and tonight, you will have likely heard a lot about the law being unfair or punishing people without them having been found guilty. For many of these crimes committed, the typical outcome would be going to jail and waiting to be tried. I believe that only being excluded from the area where an offender is committing a violation is a reasonable alternative to jail, both for the offender and the community as a whole. This is especially true in light of the dire funding situation for our county jail that the Eugene Police Department rely on. As a current participant in the County Corrections Academy, I am learning a lot more about what you already know, and that is that on a daily basis, many criminal offenders, people who have been arrested for dealing heroin or other illicit drugs, rape, violent crimes, etc., are being released from our jail due to the limited capacity issues. These offenders are released because they are deemed to be the least risk to others, albeit still a risk. While investing millions of dollars to try and revitalize downtown and meet this community's goal to do that, to remove this effective tool that is financially responsible would be unjust to the community as a whole. So I'm asking you to please keep the downtown safety zone intact. Thank you.
Larry Leveroni is next, followed by Lauren Reagan.
Hi, I'm Larry Leveroni. I thank you all for your time and your attention. I'm in Alan Zelenka's ward. I live at 10th and High Street, and I've lived there for going on 15 years. I'm a retired IBMer, and I love downtown. Why look at our library, look at our LTD station, look at the new LCC building, look at the new restaurants, look at our better bike lanes, look at our paved roads, and look at less empty pits. All these took a long time planning and a lot of hard effort. I don't believe in quick fixes. I believe in real solutions. So let me encourage all of you to look towards a number of solid solutions. Many of us view as solutions to the needs of downtown. Here briefly are 10. 1, we desperately need a community center free for our kids, located in the core of downtown. 2, we need real progress on the mayor's homeless task force, otherwise known as Opportunity Eugene. 3, we need more well-trained, well-paid, publicly accountable law enforcement officers downtown. 4, We need enforcement of just laws fairly and equitably. 5, we need 2 or 3 more Kahoot vans or a publicly funded mental health facility. 6, we need more public and private jobs. 7, we need higher taxes on people like me. 8, we need to get LCC, Northwest Christian College, and the U of O more integrated into our downtown community. 9, we need improved medical care for all, like the Occupy Eugene medical tent on Sundays. 10, and most importantly, we need increased respectful dialogue between all of us. We need to be inclusive in our efforts. We need to be real solution-oriented, Councilman Clark, and not exclusive in a zone. Thank you.
Next is Lauren Regan. Please, no clapping. Lauren Regan. I'll again repeat what I always say is that you want this place to be a place that everyone feels safe to have their different points of view, and it helps if we don't clap or hiss or boo or do any of those things. So thank you. Be respectful of everyone.
Lauren Regan, Civil Liberties Defense Center, 259 East 5th Ave. And I'm just going to briefly focus on what we view as very serious constitutional concerns and the reason that we recommend that this law be allowed to sunset. The first is there are a number of constitutional tests that every statute or ordinance must satisfy. And one of those tests is whether or not the ordinance is the least restrictive means in dealing with a problem, and whether or not that ordinance is effective in actually solving the problem it was set out to solve. And I don't believe that this ordinance has achieved either of those goals. To discriminately exclude certain individuals primarily based on their economic status and their appearance is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause, and so much discretion has been given to law enforcement in giving the notices of show cause for the exclusion zone that a person who appears to be a shopper who is busted for drugs would not be given that notice to show cause, whereas someone who has no choice but to hang out in these areas because, of course, our city has no day shelter or other space for them to go, it's obvious why people would congregate in the center of town. Also, I think that this statute is a violation of the Due Process Clause for a number of reasons. In our written comments, we noted that a homeless person or someone with mental health issues is literally required to come to court 5 times in order to go through the legal process in Eugene Municipal Court. They must go to court twice just to determine whether or not they're excluded for 90 days, and that's well, let me back up. So they're given the notice to show cause and they're given a citation, and immediately they are technically excluded. They have 3 to 5 days to show up at Eugene Municipal Court and request a hearing only to come back again. If you're homeless, you don't have a phone, you don't have a calendar, it's tough enough to make it to court once. But just to maintain their right to travel, to cross town, and to be in the downtown area, these individuals have to show up to court twice. And then there's an additional 2 to 3 court appearances just to deal with their actual criminal charge. And if convicted of those charges because they either failed to show up for any of those court dates, then they're excluded for a year. And we've had a number of instances in the Eugene Municipal Court where an individual will be excluded on the 90-day rule, and when they come to court for trial, their charges are dismissed. And so they have been excluded for 90 days without the opportunity for an attorney, without the ability to view their discovery, and they are excluded for 90 days and then have no adjudication of the underlying charge. Thank you.
Jan Wassman is next, followed by Claire Surratt.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Jan Wastman. I live at 2645 Riverview Street. Alan Zelenka is my counselor. I'm going to urge you to allow the downtown exclusion zone ordinance to expire as it should. And I'm going to focus on just one aspect that I think makes that case. Last week, our neighborhood had our annual neighborhood potluck dinner, and Councilor Alan Zelenka was one of our guests, and he gave his usual city council report. And one of the items that was discussed was this particular ordinance. Councilor Zelenka mentioned that of the people that have been excluded from the downtown zone, 24% ultimately were either found innocent of the underlying charge or had their charges dismissed for lack of evidence. Now that's an astounding error rate. It strikes me that we would never tolerate that kind of error rate if a doctor were misdiagnosing patients at that rate, or if a grocery store clerk were mischarging their customers at that rate. So it seems to me that if we can't seem to get it right for our downtown exclusion zone, that we have that kind of, that high a number of people who were excluded, and then ultimately the charge for which they were excluded they're not found guilty of, that alone is enough reason to sunset this particular ordinance. Thank you.
Claire Surratt is next, followed by Michael Kerrigan.
Good evening. I'm Claire Surratt, and I'm here representing the ACLU of Oregon and our opposition to extending the downtown public safety zone. Our reasons for opposing this program have not changed since it was first proposed in 2008, and none of the concerns we have raised have been effectively addressed by this council or the police department. The right to travel and associate freely in public spaces is a basic civil and human right. Limiting that right is a form of punishment that should not be applied without due process of law. This ordinance allows people to be banished from our public spaces without the benefit of the important due process rights we expect from our criminal justice system. It is an end run around the protections normally in place before someone is sanctioned for criminal activity. As one Portland judge said of that city's exclusion ordinance, in practice it amounts to an elaborate scheme to accomplish detention, arrest, exclusion, and search of its targets while avoiding judicial oversight to protect the liberties of citizens. While Eugene's zone may differ in some details, the effect is the same. We have police officers using broad discretion to target those they have deemed troublemakers, a court system trying to sort out who to banish based on very low standards of evidence, and people being excluded before they have been found guilty of a crime. All this comes with no objective evidence that this program has served to make downtown safer. The EPD was tasked with providing this council with an activity report on the zone, ostensibly to provide the council with enough information to weigh the merits of the program and ensure it was being administered properly. This year, as in 2010 when the zone first came up for renewal, the police department seems unprepared to provide a report with the data and analysis needed to evaluate the program. This is astonishing considering that the deadline for that report has been known since the ordinance was created. We have a number of concerns about how the data for the zone has been collected, and we have shared those concerns with Chief Kearns and his staff, but we cannot wait for EPD to improve their data collection process to evaluate this flawed program. The exclusion zone must be allowed to end. Our judges already have the ability to impose exclusion as a form of sanction for criminal conviction. This would eliminate the current situation wherein people face an exclusion hearing without benefit of a court-appointed attorney or other important due process protections. This would accomplish the goal of the City Council to effectively sanction repeat offenders without the unfair and burdensome process created by the exclusion zone. The City of Eugene should recognize what many others in the community have realized, and some have expressed to me personally, that this program is just wrong. It has created a shortcut around constitutional due process protections for those accused of crimes, and it has not proven effective in reducing crime in Eugene. We urge this council to vote against extending the downtown public safety zone. Thank you.
Michael Kerrigan is next, followed by Joe Tyndall.
My name is Michael Kerrigan, because I said I was from Ward 7. Still proud to be from there. And I work for Community Alliance of Lane County, which has been advocating for peace and human rights for 45 years. Eugene is a human rights city where everybody should be treated with dignity and respect. We oppose the exclusion zone because we believe many of those being excluded are not being treated with the dignity and respect, and that the rights are being violated by confusing and sometimes arbitrary and capricious process. I've heard disturbing stories about folks being profiled and treated unfairly by some in the Eugene Police Department. For example, leaning against the wall downtown, getting a trespass violation, sitting on the sidewalk, and more. These targets are usually marginalized and vulnerable people, such as the unhoused who must sleep outside and rely on public spaces for resting places, bathrooms, and safety. They're often treated differently than those who have permanent homes. Eugene can do better. Instead of an exclusion zone fueled by fear, we call for a vibrant downtown inclusion zone full of optimism and hope, where everybody, merchants, shoppers, those who live downtown, and youth in a house are welcome and treated with respect. Downtown Eugene is rapidly changing for the better, thanks to the mayor and the council, to you and others. The holes are being filled and folks are coming downtown in bigger numbers. Every Friday in Kesey Square, folks are setting up tables and gathering to play, celebrate community, and break bread together, even though this is violating a city code. Let's change the law and spread that activity throughout downtown. Let's bring back the benches and let people set up tables to play cards and checkers elsewhere in downtown. The Opportunity Eugene Task Force will be making proposals that may call for a day center downtown and more changes for the better. For the unhoused, come up with lockers and other things that will make their lives better. This will improve the quality of life for all concerned. And of course, by next summer, we're going to have a total of 9 police downtown. That's what's really going to make it safe. Times are changing. People are rolling up their sleeves to make downtown a better place. It's the right time to let the exclusion zone ordinance sunset so downtown can become a place where all are truly welcome. Thank you.
Joe Tyndall is next, followed by Sabra Marcroft.
Good evening. My name is Joe Tyndall. Andrea is my city councilor. Downtown Public Safety Zone. Isn't that a nice, positive, giggles and puppies way for describing what is in fact an exclusion zone? If the right people don't like some group of undesirables, the city will simply make it unlawful for those people to even show up on the streets. Throughout history, there have been many exclusion zones. The Nazis used this tactic on the Jews. In America, we routinely applied exclusion zones to Chinese, Japanese, the latest immigrant group, and of course blacks. Have we forgotten Oregon's sunset or sundown laws? If you had black skin and you were not out of town by sundown, you could be arrested, tortured, or killed, no questions asked. The current undesirable group is the homeless. Yeah, some are dirty, not unexpected if one is living on the streets. Some are mentally ill, drug users, and alcoholics. Some are downright hostile. Hell, if I was trying to sleep in the rain and some cop repeatedly forced me to move along, I'd get hostile too. But I think there is one thing we can all agree on. The unhoused need to be punished. Isn't that God's plan? Aren't they homeless because they're lazy and immoral? If they were good, they'd be rich, right? Well, maybe not. When the uber wealthy have transferred 85% of the world's investment capital into China, is there any question why Oregon's true unemployment rate hovers around 20%? Bottom line, despite the rosy prognoses from the corporate media, this recession will be long and deep. More budget cuts, more bankruptcies, more foreclosures, more homeless. We have two choices. We can punish the homeless by ticketing them for improperly crossing a street or leaning against a building and then tack on an exclusion enhancement. And if they don't go away, we can punish them some more. And if they still don't get it, we can punish them even more. Okay? This despite the fact that even with an increased police presence, the downtown exclusion zone has failed to solve the problem. Alternately, we can allow a camp for the homeless, like the many successful sites we have now discovered around this country. You may remember how quiet downtown was when the homeless were staying with Occupy, a proven success. A camp will be much cheaper, more humane, and far more effective. Thank you.
Sabra Marcroft is next, followed by Jean Stacy.
Hi, I'm Sabra Marcroft, still residing in Andrea Archie's ward. People I know don't come downtown not because of the homeless and delinquent youth, but because of the parking meters. It's not the spare change that meters require, it's the fine you get for losing track of time shopping or eating a meal. Shop owners also run afoul of parking enforcement. The town I graduated high school in took out their parking meters when I was a teenager. Increased bike and foot patrols of police with the savings resulting from reducing parking enforcement and revitalized a decades-abandoned downtown. I went back last year, and their downtown is still vibrant and full of people, not parking meters. People pay to park in garages when spaces on the street are full or they want their car out of the rain. They're happy to do so since you pay after, so there is no ticket or fine involved. Not long ago, I met a young man in the Midtown area. He was selling tiny pieces of beaded jewelry he had made and handwritten copies of poetry he had written. I guess because I had this Occupy bandana on, he felt free to speak to me. He told me how he had only found $50 worth of day labor that week and was vending to make whatever he could. And he told me about how he was sleeping in a parked van so whatever money he could make could help keep his girlfriend in a room in a house while she recovered from surgery. And he told me about being warned away from downtown by the police. He looked scared, watching for the Midtown security to kick him out. Sleeping in a van on the street is illegal. If he got cited for it twice, the van would be towed. Selling stuff on the street may or may not be illegal, but it will certainly get you in trouble. When decent people are treated like criminals simply for getting in the way of legitimate business, they begin to lose their self-respect. It becomes easier and easier to turn to crime to survive. When police officers are given social approval for being harsh with certain people, like any other human beings, they tend to increase the behavior they get praised for. This is a problem when the people they are praised for being harsh with are already marginalized. These marginalized people are more likely to react to harsh treatment with rebellion and increased misbehavior than to learn from their mistakes. Fear will send them into other neighborhoods. Despair and anger will turn them towards crime and even violence. Really, if you're going to have an effective public safety zone, you need to put up a wall around the whole city and make people pay to enter. The farmers outside the walls can deal with the homeless as they see fit. Wait, we already tried that. This country was settled by people fleeing that sort of treatment. It was tried again during the Great Depression. It didn't work so well then either. Thank you very much.
Jean Stacy is next, followed by Charles Warren.
As a taxpayer, I got a little worried listening to Lauren, because one of the things that I figured out finally this morning after 2 weeks is the only reason we have the downtown safety zone is to deprive people of due process. Before the zone, we could exclude people. The only drawback was we had to take them to court first. We had to find them guilty of something. So the only thing the exclusion does, the exclusion zone, is deprive due process. And another lawyer would figure that out quicker than I did. We have so many better solutions. I've been talking to some of the businessmen that are down here today. They love Occupy. They love us because we provided a place for people to go that was better than the downtown. So instead of passing or extending a law that is clearly discriminatory, it is clearly being abused. We see it. We see it when we're down at Kesey Square. We see it when we're walking the streets. You will see it when you get the police reports, if you can get the police reports. These are not felons we're evicting. These are not dangerous criminals. These are people who annoy other people. It is not being used in a proper way. There is no proper way. It's wrong. None of you really want to know what's going on. Because if you do, you will have to say no to some of your constituents who want you to place their interest to run a commercial zone above other people's basic rights. I know you don't want to know, but it's your job to know. And it's our job to tell you. Occupy has put a spotlight on the homeless. It has also put a spotlight on you and on this policy. We're all a little leery right now because the warming center wasn't opened. We're a little leery because transition services weren't offered when you shut us down. We're very leery when we see what this zone has been doing. I beg of you, don't extend this zone. Don't let this be who we all are. We're all complicit if we let you extend this zone. Let it die. Thank you.
Charles Warren is next, followed by Carol Berg Caldwell.
Good evening. My name's Charles Warren. I live at 86260 Lorraine Highway, and I own and work at an office building on High Street. I'm here again representing the Board of Directors of Midtown Business Associates, an association of 85 businesses and property owners who, including our employees and our residents, represent many hundreds of people. Our boundaries are 11th to 15th and Charlton to Ferry, and our members pay voluntary dues that go exclusively for private security patrols to try to keep our neighborhood safe from the street crime and the addicts and the vagrants who hang out there. We are not included in the exclusion zone, excuse me, because our boundaries start at 11th and run south, but we experience many of the same problems that downtown does. Our organization strongly supports the downtown exclusion zone and urges you to extend it. The people being excluded are not merely committing minor offenses or are down in their luck, as some people would have you believe here. I see the monthly exclusion reports, and those that are being excluded are chronic, repeated offenders. They're disruptive, and they're violent, or some of them are violent. And they aren't being excluded just at the discretion of a police officer. Rather, all cases must have judges' approval too. What are your real options here? You can do nothing and let the troublemakers stay and compound the problems we have downtown. Maybe you won't have them arrested. But we all know that there are no consequences for this type of behavior in Eugene. We don't have jail beds to hold them. In fact, we don't even have enough police officers to run them down when they don't show up for their trial dates. Our situation is almost laughable if it wasn't so tragic. Or you can continue the exclusion zone and give the police one of the only effective tools they really have to keep our downtown safe. You might ask yourself, why do we have more of these problems than most communities? Well, it's no secret, as you know. We attract these problems because of Eugene's reputation for a high degree of tolerance for intolerable behavior. With all the county budget cuts that are coming our way, we are facing an even more difficult time ahead. Don't make the situation even worse by rescinding this vitally important ordinance. Thank you.
Carol Berg Caldwell is next, followed by Vicki Nelson.
A light little poem. Carol Berg Caldwell, 2510 Augusta. To be or not to be, an especially apt question for just the exclusion zone. Whether 'tis nobler to deep six it, of course, better remedies let's hone. Aimless youth, unhoused lingerers, mentally ill, and similarly afflicted, let's offer help and services, not more hammers on the convicted. And about that recent input from Midtown Merchants et al., the problems are pushed to their hood now, they sure don't think that's a ball. This exclusion Band-Aid is so futile for society's ills, big or small. Let's study real remedies for the good of all. Here's another thing we can surely do without. Yet another federal lawsuit, one will lose, no doubt. Ever more thousands of taxpayer bucks to defend the indefensible. You've the power to head this off, and that's surely no But since it's just taxpayers, not you, paying that costly tab, perhaps you'll simply shrug and endorse exclusion rather than proactive efforts towards rehab. Tonight we hope for your wisdom and leadership extraordinaire. Rather than more fear-mongering and community division, more hot air, you can see exclusion merely pushes problems to hoods not downtown. Solving zip zero nada, neighboring merchants object with a frown. Spinning wheels, aimlessly shuffling society's problems here and there. Surely we can do better. Why, yes, you've seen such examples of civic care. Yes, Occupy gave some of you a Jones, irked some no end, but just look how they helped so many, those who could not fend. Street kids, the unhoused, addicted, and mentally ill in motley unity, fed, cared for, included. It was all about community. And downtown merchants noticed the blessed break they got. Crowds no longer blocking sidewalks, fights no longer fought. Yes, those downtown parks were near empty. I strolled one such vacant park. Forlorn security guards and police with nary a need to bite or bark. Council, there's your template for better ways to deal with problems downtown. Work from the heart with community. Put away that exclusion zone frown. Let it sunset, RIP. Let's put united shoulders behind Eugene's downtown address. Let's head off costly lawsuits. You must know that pit's not bottomless. But more than simply avoiding lawsuits, it's the right thing to do. Excluding folks already on the margins won't speak well of Eugene or you. You've seen task forces formed to assist the unhoused, street gangs, the mentally ill. Actual solutions, not punitive exclusion hammers, will better fit the bill. Weigh thoughtfully, we're watching, no longer idling in the wings. Community is actively engaged, organized, involved. We want to help you in these things. Community unity. Thank you.
Vicki Nelson is next, followed by Donna Riddle.
Mayor Piercy, councilors, my name is Vicki Nelson. I live in Eugene and have for over 40 years. And when I moved here 40 years ago, there were signs downtown at the West End that said, "Welcome to downtown, park free." And there was a bathroom in the middle of the mall. And there was a little post office there. That's just an aside, but it was much more livable. Lots of stores. I'm here tonight to ask you to let the exclusion zone sunset. I read a lot of documents, some from the city, getting ready for tonight, and I saw the phrase perception of improvement, that in some city documents they said that there's a perception of improvement, which shows the success of the exclusion zone. I'd like you to consider what that phrase means, and to consider, is a perception of improvement actually improvement? For instance, where do you think the people you've excluded so far are? Are they not going to the bathroom anymore? Are they not sleeping? Where are they? Do you think they're out at LCC getting training and learning how to write a resume? I think it's more likely they're in somebody's yard. I found a boy once sleeping in the hedge in my backyard. Or maybe they're down by the river, using the riverbank as a bathroom. Because you know what? Everything that's born on the earth has to eat, has to sleep, has to go to the bathroom. They have to be somewhere. They are doing it. You've moved the problem a little, possibly, but it was also moved to our camp once. So maybe while they're down at the river there, they're fighting. Maybe they're getting hurt. Or maybe they are hurting someone, but they're out of sight. Don't we still care about it? Here's another question. Do you think the exclusion zone is legal? Do you think due process is being fouled? Do you think these people have access to a lawyer, that they can think they can get a pro bono lawyer, or that they have the wherewithal, the determination, the experience to ask for one? I also read in city materials that someone spoke of the zone as constitutionally defensible. It seems to me, if that phrase comes up, someone else must have been thinking it is not constitutional. And so I would like to know, who would bring the exclusion zone to court to test its constitutionality? Well, no one has so far, because the people being excluded don't have the bucks, don't have the knowledge, don't have the determination. These are our most vulnerable and defenseless people. They are the ones we should protect. Some of us here tonight are from Occupy Eugene. I know you know that. We used to have a camp at Washington Jefferson, and you made us close the camp down. Some of us wish we had fought harder to keep the camp going. But to tell you the truth, without the homeless with us, we have more energy now to turn to issues and to fight.
Thank you. Donna Riddle is next, followed by Irene Cardenas.
I just want to make a few points. I come downtown. It's not always comfortable, but and that's with the exclusion zone, so I don't see that the exclusion zone really works. And I come down anyway because sometimes there are things I want to do and there are restaurants I like to visit, and I am not letting fear rule my life. I really think that the exclusion zone is un-American. It lacks due process. It's when the bathrooms that are open 24 hours a day are downtown and people can't use them because they've been excluded, where are they going to take care of their business? Is it going to be in front of a business uptown, somebody's front yard, down by the river? That's not okay. I think you should let it sunset. And the other thing that I think that would really help downtown is a day center, a community place, and a place in the evening where people without money can congregate and do something worthwhile. Thank you.
Irene Cardenas is next, followed by Randy Kane.
Irene Cardenas. No one should have to put up with racist, sexist, normist harassment and prejudice, that kind of pervasive oppression, and different people have different experiences of the truth of how horrible that is. But it'd be nice if there's problems, if they could be dealt with in a way that create a more harmonious experience. If the people that interact with the police as a result become more harmonious in their interactions wherever they go, and the police can have a harmonious interaction, and they become more harmonious and healthy with the influence they have when they go back to their team, with their teammates. Exclusion zone, when that is heard in the media, I'm not sure this is the best for business. I'm not sure it's a good marketing term, because when people feel happy and comfortable, then they want to buy things. And if people actually try to read all the laws and retain them, people don't have 100% clarity at those kinds of tasks, and people might feel uncomfortable downtown if they rest their hand against a wall. I've heard of all kinds of different laws. I'm not sure it's best for business. When people are excluded, it's traumatic. Research by Peter Levine on healing trauma shows that wild animals, after one of them is traumatized by a predator, they embrace and envelop the animal in the security of the group's protection, and animals, as a result, have no PTSD. Now you see Vietnam vets come back and got traumatized because they were excluded. And if police can have a resource card that they can give to people that lists, hey, this is where you can go play basketball, meditate, garden. If you're homeless, this is where you can live in nature and community, and where you can get meals. If they can give this to people, it can become an opportunity for people to bond with the government and with the police, and the police that can have harmonious interactions might be publicly recognized for being able to do that. This graph shows when people appreciate each other, then they have really harmonious rhythms, biorhythms that come off of their bodies and interact with each other. And when they don't, when they're traumatized or they're not having harmonious interactions, they get these really stressed rhythms. And this is what they radiate. And so the more of this kind of stress we create, the less healthy the whole community is. And in Atlanta had a lawsuit in 1997 where they had to designate on arrest records if people were homeless so they can track if there's discrimination. Thank you.
Randy Kane is next, followed by Bill Whalen.
Randy Kane, 1236 West 13th Avenue. Actually, Donna kind of beat me to the punch here, because what I wanted to bring up was one of the reasons that you have people spending the night downtown in the overnight hours was you have a steam tunnel system downtown running under the streets that makes every manhole cover in town a heated bed. You have privacy partitions in the dumpsters behind the buildings, the alleyways, all these corners here and there that provide people a place to sleep where it is relatively private. You have to go and look for them to actually see them. These things need to be taken into account, and the legislation needs to take this into account. And also you're excluding the one set of open bathrooms that are open for business all day and all night. You're not making those available to everyone in the downtown area. Those who've been affected by this law have no place to go. So please take this into account. Please let this go, because there is going to be someone who challenges this law in court at some point, and I fear that they will lose, and I personally don't want to pay for that. Thank you.
Bill Whalen is next, followed by Joseph Newton.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Bill Whalen. I live in Eugene in Ward 5. I'm a member of the Eugene Chamber of Commerce Local Government Affairs Council, and I'm here tonight representing that group. We commend the City of Eugene and the Eugene Police Department for the successful implementation of the Downtown Public Safety Zone as a part of your efforts towards a vibrant and healthy downtown. When the city last extended this ordinance, it was hoped that the new officers downtown and the increased jail capacity would eliminate the need for it in the future. However, Lane County budget challenges have resulted in a reduction in jail beds to a point lower than when the ordinance was enacted in 2008, making the continued need for this alternative to incarceration clear. In addition, the public safety zone is being conducted responsibly and thoughtfully coordinated with other anti-crime efforts throughout the city, as well as being regularly evaluated and improved to ensure that it is continuing to fairly and effectively serve all members of the community. The public safety zone has proven to be an effective means of deterring crimes throughout downtown, leading to a decrease in criminal trespass, alcohol-related crime, all property crimes, and improving the public's perception of the safety and livability of downtown. Therefore, the Chamber's Local Government Affairs Committee strongly urges you to support the renewal of this ordinance as an important piece in the long-term strategy for downtown safety. Thank you.
Joseph Newton is next, followed by Ruth Demler.
Okay, Joseph Newton, semi-housed in Ward 7, Whitaker. Okay, Ms. Regan has already covered the constitutional aspects. She knows her business. Claire from the ACLU has covered the unnecessary aspect that I wrote to you of, and I trust that you took time to read my missive. So I'm going to talk about the counterproductive, the useless, the absolutely useless. We just heard about a few annoyance things that have gone down. What your little ordinance did not do was prevent a person running around the Kesey bench in broad daylight, kicking and hitting a person over and over again with no response except a guy who weighs 135 pounds soaking wet to stand in front of him. When 5 minutes later I suffered a reprisal assault, when my face was caved in, when I was bleeding, I walked a half a block to call the police. They couldn't send somebody out. The police who can cite a person and go to court because he's running up a tree trunk couldn't send somebody out when a contributing citizen
was bleeding from the face after having done the job of the police when our own police chief walked out in his lobby. You could see that. Somebody who had actually in the past tried to help build bridges between the police and citizenry couldn't even bother to ask how he was doing. That's sort of ineffective. And this happened right in the thick of that ordinance, folks. This really is an issue of safety for the police. I've told you about the coincidence. There is no such thing as mere coincidence in this universe. There is only synchronicity. For a person of my capacity to articulate, who is a neglected crime victim, to be in the police station, the first time in 75 years a policeman lost his life in the line of duty is no mere coincidence. It is a harbinger. Our police can serve the community equally. This is what, and that perception of police service is what keeps them safe. There are not enough weapons to keep them safe otherwise. It is that perception. When our police are no longer interested in protecting, serving the community, but are willing tools of class warfare, there is no more safety.
Ruth Demler is next, followed by Allie Valkyrie.
Ruth Demler, 1745 Fort Crest. I think it's all been said tonight. I really urge you to stop this exclusion zone. It's just not a human right to have in our community a place where it is zoned off for people who can't walk and can't get the bus and cannot visit with friends. It's completely wrong. And I'm so proud of all the speakers tonight who have made the case against the exclusion zone. The presentations really have been outstanding. I'd like to go to a few other topics that come under that. First of all, I remember when the City Council voted for 5 24-hour bathrooms. And I don't think we have 5 24-hour bathrooms, or we wouldn't be complaining about people not having bathrooms. Also, people need to store their belongings during the day. I understand there is a movement by the city to have lockers for everyone to store their things. I hope this happens quickly. People can't lug all their life's belongings on their back all day long. They need to have a place to put them safely for the day. Also, I encourage you to start the wet bed program. I understand there is a movement going for that too, but we have to speed this up. We're years too late on this. And we need a full-time center for our young people. Young people here in Eugene, they finish their school and the jobs are just not there. And so often they find themselves out on the street. We must have a full-time center for our young people. It's really a crime to witness young people in our community going the wrong way because they have almost no other chance. We need a full-time center for them. Thank you.
Allie Valkyrie is next, followed by Walter Hunt.
Allie Valkyrie, Ward 1. You already have my address. A few weeks ago, I spoke with the sergeant in charge of downtown about the safety zone and how it's currently being applied. In response to my concerns that people are being punished for a crime they have yet to be convicted of, I was told the following, and I quote, "The exclusion itself isn't a punishment. They don't get punished until they try to come back in." I still can't get over that one. Not only are the police abusing their discretion in applying this law, some of them don't even believe that exclusion in itself is a punishment. Banishment as a form of punitive punishment has been used since ancient times, the first anecdotal record being a rather notorious one from the Garden of Eden. Banishment was used historically through ancient societies, from Babylon to Greece to Rome, through the Middle Ages, through Europe. It's been rarely used in modern times, but a notable example is a Soviet policy known as Propiska, which was first instituted in the 1930s for population control reasons. Under Propiska, those without an acceptable occupation were exiled from major cities, along with the homeless, criminals, political dissidents, and other undesirables, all who were instructed not to live within 100 kilometers of the city they were exiled from. One of the most well-known examples of this purging was just before the 1980 Olympic Games, when the Soviets wished to project a clean, safe, positive image of the city to an international audience. The downtown public safety zone is nothing more than another modern version of banishment, also designed to project a clean, safe, positive image of the city. Now, of course, we don't banish beyond 100 kilometers. We just push them out of the business district and into the backyards of the surrounding residential neighborhoods. At least the Soviet method was effective. We banish people just far enough to cut them off from everything essential to daily life: public bathrooms, the dining room, the library, the bus station, the police auditor, and most importantly, their community. For the homeless and disenfranchised, downtown is their home, and downtown community is their family. Not only are we punishing people for crimes they have yet to be convicted for, but we're exiling from necessary resources and their loved ones. At least in ancient times, banishment was a public affair. The citizens got to have their say. Exclusions in this town pretty much happen in secret. If you all truly believe the law is being used appropriately, then why aren't these attempts made public? If you're going to exile a member of my community, I have a right to know. None of us should stand for anything less than complete transparency on this issue. But let's be honest, the exclusion law isn't keeping people safe. Downtown police patrols are. And this law is not being applied currently in the interest of public safety. It's being applied with a downtown branding plan in mind. The spotlight on this issue is greater than many of us may know. For those who are not aware, Friday's press conference in Kesey Square concerning our opposition was written up by the Associated Press, and the story ran in papers nationwide. I spent last night in Berkeley, another college town of similar size and spirit as Eugene. They seem to get along just fine in Berkeley without excluding their undesirables. They even allow the homeless to sit down in Berkeley. It was remarkable. They have benches and everything, and it felt pretty safe to me. Thank you.
Walter Hunt is next, followed by David Mort.
Good evening. I'm Walter Hunt, 2745 Spring Boulevard. I'm not an academic, and I'm not an attorney. I'm just a regular working guy. Been working in Eugene for about 40 years. The exclusion zone. When this came forward, it was my understanding this would be used against real criminal activity, and that's been what I've seen. I was involved in one incident where someone was excluded. This person had about 80 charges against them, many of them assaults. People in my business were assaulted. If the exclusionary zone is abused, I can't support it. If the exclusionary zone is used against occupied people and homeless people, I can't support it. I don't see that. I see some really scary people doing some really criminal things to people over and over again, and that's why they get excluded. I see due process. I see going to a court and seeing a judge review this as due process. I don't see a conviction there, but that is due process. There's a lot of smart people out here that I agree with. There's a lot of smart people out here that I'm on the fence with. But I don't suggest that you throw this out yet. I suggest that you see the police department follow through in its review and convince you that it works. I suggest that you don't throw it out because it's still a good tool. I walked from my business back to see several incidences in the park, but they were dealt with very humanely. I know the officers that work downtown, Tom Schulke, Rich Bremer, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but I see them talk at length with people and try to help them solve their problems. I don't see this fascist state that I hear other people talking about. I look for it, and if I see it, I'll challenge it with them. I will be standing in that line with them. But I'm not seeing that. So I hope to hear back from Chief Kearns and the police department to convince the council and the community that this does work and that it is not being abused. Again, I will not support it if it is. That's all I have to say.
David Mort is next, followed by David Hauser.
Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is David Mort, 1085 North Pond Road. I'm here this evening to speak on behalf of the downtown safety zone. I work downtown. I spend roughly 6.5 days a week down here. In the 3 years that I've been down here, I've seen a drastic improvement to the downtown area, especially the corners of Olive and Broadway. I don't see police officers randomly going to people and telling them to get out because they don't like the way they look or the way they act. I see police officers going to people who are doing bad things to people, telling them they can't be here. A personal experience was there was a group of young men who were standing around in front of my building, and anytime one of them had to use the restroom, they would pee on it. I went out and said, please don't urinate on my building. And they started screaming at me about being Vietnam veterans, and I didn't care for them and their needs. I called the police. The police didn't offer or didn't issue an exclusion, but asked them to leave. I've not seen anything but people trying their best to do a good job and to use judgment before they utilize this exclusion. So I'm speaking on behalf of it. Thank you.
Dave Hauser is next, followed by Stephen Michael Todd.
Good evening, Dave Hauser, 1401 Willamette. I'm here tonight representing Downtown Eugene Incorporated. DEI is an association of property owners and businesses dedicated to helping you build a strong and vital downtown. DEI is also very much in support of the continuation of the downtown public safety zone. And I think there are just a couple of points I'd like to make in that regard tonight. I think it would be easy to overstate or somehow minimize the importance of the downtown public safety zone. I think it is an important as a tool, yet it's only one of many tools that we need to achieve our community's public safety goals in our downtown. But if you ask Downtown Eugene Incorporated and the downtown guides, the red caps that patrol downtown, accomplishing our public safety goals would be significantly more difficult without the downtown public safety zone. And you've heard it throughout the evening tonight, without any means to create consequences for chronic offenders. Making our downtown an area where everyone feels safe and welcome would be very difficult. The downtown public safety zone quite simply provides a replacement to an incarceration capacity that currently does not exist and temporarily displaces persistent violators from our downtown. That's why DEI and groups such as the Downtown Public Safety Task Team, the Eugene Police Commission, who thoroughly reviewed this ordinance not once but twice and endorsed it both times, the Eugene Police Department, the Eugene Chamber of Commerce, a host of downtown businesses, the Midtown Business Association, all support the downtown public safety zone. You know, the City Council and your staff deserve a great deal of recognition for leadership that has resulted in the remarkable momentum that we have underway in our downtown. And I'd like to see us keep that momentum going. Casting aside the downtown public safety zone right now could, in my opinion, stifle the momentum that we've all worked so hard to create by sending a message to the businesses and residents that we need and want to invest, to live, and to shop in our downtown, that there's one less tool available to keep them safe. So finally, I think it makes sense to extend the sunset provision within downtown public safety zone. It gives us a chance to reassess after the new downtown patrolman unit is fully up and operating, time to assess the positive impacts of the revitalization efforts underway in our downtown, and to assess the cumulative effects of all of our public safety strategies. Renewing the ordinance can build a bridge from where we are to where we want to be from a public safety point of view. Thank you.
Stephen Michael Todd is next, followed by Art Bowman.
On this downtown exclusion...
Would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Stephen Michael Todd, and I'm a resident of Eugene, Oregon. Okay. On 3 different times, I've faced, well, twice, but the second time because I was found innocent, but I'm still barred from LTD. But anyways, I'd like to read this letter that come from said sergeant. Mandarin, okay. Following Todd's conviction in multiple court on the above charge, criminal trespassing 2 issue, a show cause regarding a possibility of exclusion from the downtown public safety zone. In interest of justice, I request this form be dismissed. Okay, I was placed, a lot of people don't realize, each month, the 1st of January of this year, that goes into the law enforcement and the security guards and all. I was faced downtown exclusion pending. My full name, my full address and everything. These papers do exist. Okay, I was not primarily. And, okay, I believe that there is problems with, there is problems in this world, but the city council, but as far as secluding an individual from downtown or secluding is wrong. What the solutions are is for us to get together, discuss them, talk to them. Why are we American citizens without the rights to, lay our head down safely? I know by speaking I face more persecution because I don't have the ability to defend myself. But I feel that the key to what we face is by communicating. But I feel that the downtown exclusion law, the safety zone, has been wrongfully and whatever. Yes, they are bad in everybody, or in certain ones. But I wish I could get a lot of my friends who have faced this to come forward and speak, but they face further persecution, so they won't speak. But I will. I feel that, I hope that next week that you will let the law, will not extend the law, but I feel that something in certain ways, and whatever, needs to be, we need to all get together and communicate. I agree there is problems, but we can work them out in communication. When you wrongfully persecute, but literally, the 1st of January, I was put on here pending. And I can't say who that come from, but it is true, what they said to me. I feel that the only way, giving us housing, giving us, Occupy worked. There was a few, but a lot of good was going on. Give a person who has been wrongfully.
Thank you. Thank you. Art Bowman is next, followed by Brian Michaels.
Hi, my name is Art Bowman. I'm from the 2nd Ward. I wanted to discuss some concerns I have about this exclusion zone within the context of the national criminalization of dissent. Now, I'm a member of Occupy, and although we've been treated fairly well in Eugene, nationwide it's been a completely different story. I'm sure you all remember last fall when, through a coordinated national top-down effort, over a dozen camps were closed within the space of a week. Right now we're looking at Chicago basically criminalizing any form of dissent or protest in anticipation of some major events they're having. The same, I understand, is being done in the cities that are hosting the Democratic and Republican conventions. And with that, I look at this zone and I'm thinking, okay, if it's used to exclude the homeless, and it seems like there are some suspect incidents, who is next? And I'm afraid the answer will be activists, protesters, and people who are trying to engage in their First Amendment rights. Now, you've all, regardless of your parties or political philosophies, endorsed our rights to dissent, sometimes under circumstances that may have been personally trying. But, and I'm waiting, and I'd really like to ask you to not leave the door open even a bit, but to close it by not renewing the exclusion zone. Thank you.
Brian Michaels is next, followed by Tom Camus.
Good evening. My name is Brian Michaels. I recently moved to Councilwoman Taylor's district. Ordinarily, I would say this would be a tough job for you being here so long, but listening to all these people, it's just a joy to know we have so many articulate and respectable members of our community to come talk to you about these issues. You must really be so proud. I'm not affiliated with any group, But I've been to a lot of these hearings on exclusionary zone, homeless, and the like, and they reminded me of somebody I met way back in 1980 at a little event I did called Vortex 2, the free alternative energy fair. Vortex 2 was the 10th year anniversary of Vortex, which was the gathering that spawned now more than 40 years of Rainbow gatherings. But whatever else you might say about Rainbow, you meet some of the best people on earth at a Rainbow gathering. And in 1980, I met a man named Joel Schatz. Joel Schatz had the unique benefit of being the world's first director of a Department of Energy, because our visionary Governor Tom McCall thought it would be a good idea to have a Department of Energy, and he, Governor McCall, was the first one to put in place a Department of Energy, the first in the world. In 1980, Joel Schatz was doing something more visionary. He and his wife Diane were undergoing an environmental campaign called Garbage is What You Throw Away. And among the various media presentations he did around the country, he had a storyboard that followed items as they went from creation, production, packaging, consumption, and you threw it away. And the whole idea of all this is that America, there really is no never, never land where things just go away. Things are here and they stay. And I submit to you that what Joel Schatz and Diane Schatz are saying in 1980, which spawned recycling and much of the environmental movement about acknowledgement that we are one Earth, is what you are trying to do here in this exclusionary zone. You're trying to throw people away. And I don't suggest to you that there's, whether or not there's more wisdom in spending a whole bunch of money on law enforcement and jails rather than support for porta potties, eating or sleeping in safe environments. That's your wisdom to make, how you spend your resources. But I suggest to you that it's unwise to feel that you can spend your way into an avenue where people simply go away. Go away in terms of people means jail. But the fact is they don't go away. And I urge you to reconsider, I urge you to consider the visionary Joel Schatz, who spawned so much, whose words back then mean just as much as they do today. Remember, garbage is what you throw away. And these people just don't go away. They're alive and they're here. That's all I have. Thank you.
Tom Camus is next, followed by Michael Gannon.
Tom Camus, 94 West Broadway. I own Davis Restaurant. I am now in George's ward. 5 years, going on 5 years this week that I'll be in that restaurant space, and very happy to be downtown and to whatever positive influence that I could have had and what happens downtown as well. I think you've all known I'm pretty involved in as much as I possibly can be and still run a business. So it's kind of interesting that tonight I'm painted very broadly as a merchant who's kind of one of the bad guys downtown because I want my customers and my employees to be safe. The exclusion zone, I've seen Schilke and I've seen Bremer actually take people and use this tool. These are not the people that are here. These are not the people that are in Occupy. These are not people who care at all about our society in any way. These are repeat offenders, people that do have problems. And you know what? Yeah, you, City of Eugene, State of Oregon, federal government, you haven't taken care of these people, and you hold that decision to make and how you're going to make that happen. I have no answers. The Occupy Sense site, honestly, I really still to this point I have no idea why that park that I've never seen a human body in the 15 years I've been in Eugene, that you decided to kick all these people out. I really don't. There could have been other ways to maybe handle that. But bottom line, this exclusion zone has to stay for one reason and one reason only. The county's losing more jail beds. After talking to sheriffs and people who are on patrol and the people who work at the jail, that means Measure 11 criminals are going to be getting out. And so that's rapists, people who do violence to others. Those are the people who are going to be excluded from downtown. And you know what? Joseph, nicest guy I've ever met in my life, so damn gentle. He gets beat up, him, really. I've had customers that are little old ladies get assaulted on the street, verbally and physically. Those are the people. It's not the people who actually care about our society, not these people. The exclusion law is not the best tool. And you know what? If somebody wants to say that it's unconstitutional, then get it into court now. Just do it. ACLU is here. They're so against it, take it to court. I want to fight these battles one by one. These aren't the nice people. These are the bad people. The nice people are here. The nice people are there helping. The exclusion law has to stay until we get more community involvement. Thanks.
Michael Gannon is next, followed by Curtis Surplus.
Good evening. I'm Michael Gannon. I box 10324. I live in Ward 7. I'd just like to try to maybe chat with you a little bit about some of the things I see. I did operate a storefront for 3.5 years on Willamette Street, just a couple of storefronts away from the intersection with Broadway. And I still see today that the downtown merchants and the Chamber of Commerce and the city are not very willing to think out of the box. I saw it then, and I really see it now. And I spent a couple of days at the Asian Festival this weekend. And as I sit back there and wait for my chance to speak, I had some thoughts about the Asian Festival. It was a remarkable event. It's really grown in Eugene over 28 years. It was a pretty small starting point. And it is really vibrant. And lots of people are there. And I think somebody who didn't know the community very well would say that it's a safe place to be Asian. And you and I know that it's pretty safe to be Asian just about anywhere in Eugene. But I noticed that at the Asian Festival, there were lots of Hispanics and lots of blacks, and the variety of Asians was great. And there was a vibrancy, a happiness about being there that is akin to what you see at the country fair. And both of these events are organized by the participants. And they have taken their event, in a sense, outside the city. And they've run it themselves with their own security. And for the country fair, it was a definite decision to escape from Middle America. And I'm not sure if that could be applied to the Asian Festival, but historically, Chinatowns across America were the only places for Asians to have a safe spot. And I think it's still hanging on. So I think that the city and the business community could look to these organizations for some guidance and maybe figure out some of the answers here.
Curtis Surplus is next, followed by James Black.
I'm Curtis Surplus, and I'm homeless. I'm disabled. I collect disability. I haven't been excluded, thank God. But when I do, if it ever comes down to that, I hope it's for a good reason. I don't mind a good jury trial. And I'm pretty sure the circuit, the 9th District Circuit Court of Appeals in Portland is definitely not going to want to hear it when it finally gets to that courtroom. And then after that, I'm pretty sure D.C. is not going to want to see this either. And somebody will bring it to that point, but hopefully not. It will be taxpayer money paying for all that. So, but hopefully you'll let this thing go away. It's pretty stupid, actually, because some of the homeless people
I don't know what kind of group of people it's targeting, but some of the homeless, or some of the disabled, or some of the excluded. Actually, before they were excluded, I did meet a couple, and they were eating at restaurants, and they were shopping at some of the stores. They were spending money. They just didn't spend, I guess, enough to someone's satisfaction. Anyway, I need some more coffee. I'm going to Starbucks.
James Black is next, followed by Janet Brown.
James Black, 2670 Eleanor Street. My concern is that we're on a slippery slope, and other people in this audience express themselves much better than what I'm going to do, so I'm going to refer to a couple of literatures. Charles Dickens' Carol, Christmas Carol goes, don't we have workhouses? Don't we have jails? And Jonathan Swift had a modest proposal, which suggested that because there are so many poor people with lots of babies, that we fatten the babies and make a business out of this. And at the point where they're fat enough, they can be fed to people who can afford to pay for them. And that takes care of all the problems. And I actually think we've turned language upside down in this town by calling something the downtown public safety or even the exclusion zone. It reminds me of these former literatures, and we're living it now. I think what we were actually looking to do by extending this exclusion zone or public safety zone is to set up an inclusion area, like, say, for example, the stadium, the Downtown Business Association, or whoever could afford to buy that place, and then we could include people, and put them to gainful employment. And lest anybody forget, Arbeit macht frei. Arbeit macht frei, cross the gate to Bergen-Belsen. Have the people making lampshades and soap. I mean, I basically think we're really on the slippery slope, and I'm not the only one in this nation who thinks that's what's going on, but it's sort of sad that we're leading the way with this downtown public safety. And yes, we can do much better with the money that's being spent to enforce this. I think that I can't say it any better than everybody else has already said it, so I'm going to stop right now. But I urge everybody to let this thing go. Let's not make this place the embarrassment, to the nation when it gets tossed up to a Ninth Circuit or finally goes up to the Supreme Court. I mean, it's a real travesty of law enforcement going on right now. Thanks.
Janet Brown is next, followed by Kimberly Glayton.
Hi, I'm Janet Brown. I live at 3225 Twin Elms, and I work downtown. So the downtown exclusion ordinance was created because Lane County budget challenges resulted in a reduction in jail beds, making the continued need for this alternative to incarceration clear. I'd like to state some facts about the exclusion ordinance from October 2008 through June 2010. The exclusion ordinance has been used for only 8% of offenders. Of the 96 exclusions requested by police, 93% have been granted by the courts. The average exclusion action involved 2.9 charged offenses per individual. So if I were to be excluded from downtown, I would have first committed more than 2 charged offenses. 12% of the individuals excluded have violated their exclusion order more than once. Judges granted 7 variances during this period for excluded individuals who had a demonstrated need to enter the exclusion zone. So whether I live downtown, work downtown, participate in Occupy Eugene downtown, ride LTD downtown, or have a minor child that rides LTD downtown, we all benefit equally from the exclusion ordinance. With Eugene and Lane County experiencing ongoing reductions in jail capacity, it does not make sense to sunset the effective tool created by our city leaders to provide an alternative to incarceration to displaced chronic violators from downtown, improving safety for all of us. The downtown exclusion ordinance, it isn't about homelessness, it isn't about discrimination or about prejudice. It's about behavior and it's about accountability. And if I choose to behave in a manner that breaks the law, I need to be held accountable, and so does everybody else. So please support a 2-year or more extension of this program. Thank you.
Next is Kimberly Gladen, followed by Betty Snowden.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Gladen. I live on West Broadway, and I'm a downtown resident. I also work in downtown. I'm a low-income worker. I barely make poverty level. I get food stamps. Like many in this room, I'm a low-income person. Unlike many of the occupiers in this room, I'm too poor to afford things like cell phones and computers and cars and fancy trips to Berkeley. I walk the streets often because I don't have any other transportation other than walking everywhere. I spend a lot of time in the downtown. I've lived here since 1999 in the downtown. Prior to that, I went to LCC frequently and spent a lot of time down here. The downtown has a unique situations and problems is that it's open to everybody, unlike areas near the campus that for 15 years have had ordinances to keep the homeless out, or areas like Oakway and Valley River that have had private property laws to keep the homeless out, where the wealthy shop, and that have never been occupied or protested. The downtown has constantly had that. Prior to the exclusion zone, the downtown frequently looked like a war zone or a see-down of Mad Max. There were open drug deals on the streets. There were people being beat up, elderly being threatened. I've been sexually harassed numerous times. All this under the guise of free speech. It was a dangerous place. Families were threatened. There's a lot of low-income families that live down here. The exclusion zones are a safety valve. It's a timeout for chronic offenders. I know many people who have lost jobs over this time. Some people come down here to cause trouble. We've had lately the Ninja Force coming down to make the downtown look again like a war zone and kill more jobs. And I've heard a lot of talk about how we don't have jobs, we don't have places for the homeless to be. Well, it's a matter of how people choose to spend their money. You know, put down the bong, stop, put down the beer. I mean, you've got cell phone apps and cars and computers and iPods, and I look at your houses when I leave downtown, and I see how you live. I see the vacations you take to Europe and Dubai and all these places and all this money going out. When I see how much is spent on football, and you tell me there's no money for the homeless to give them a shelter, you want to let them be on our streets because, oh, there's nowhere else to go? Well, put your money where your mouth is and crack open your wallets. Start giving it up. Instead of the bag of weed, instead of that beer, instead of that tailgater and the prime rib, put it toward helping people. But with a heavy heart, a very heavy heart, as much as I don't want people excluded, I have to ask for you to extend it until the downtown does come back up, until people decide to do the right thing and open their wallets and give up their money and put it where their mouth is. If you've got a cell phone, you got money to burn.
Betty Snowden is next, followed by Cynthia Kokos.
My name is Betty Snowden, P.O. Box 5166, Eugene, Oregon, and I say thank you to the mayor and our city council. And I represent Glamour Girl, 125 West Broadway, Eugene, and I am also a committed citizen of this community. I am in support of extending the downtown public safety zone. It has proven to be effective in deterring crime throughout downtown, and the Eugene Police and Downtown Guides have did a wonderful job. And the Eugene Police have been very sensible in using this tool. My family has been conducting business in downtown Eugene for over 25 years. Before the exclusion zone went into effect, my family was tortured and bullied for over 15 years. And I would say to the ACLU, where were you at that time? The offenders would come into our store, throw down our merchandise, and then look us in the eye and say, what are you going to do about it? If we go to jail, we'll be out in 5 minutes. We were spit upon, hit, guns and knives were pulled on us, called titches and niggers, and all we were trying to do was to be good citizens and run a business. But I want to let you know, things have improved for us. Our customers and other business owners. I tear up because I think about all that we had to go through. We were alone. There was nobody there to help us. And this went on day in and day out and day in and day out. And you talk about being traumatized, we were. But you know one thing we did? We held on to the love for people. I love everybody in this room, regardless of if they want to extend this zone or not, because we are about love. This exclusion zone is not about getting rid of a person because of the way they look, dress, whether they're homeless, low income, old or young. But this is about repeat offenders, and we would have the same person do the same thing over and over and over, and sometimes it was 3 and 4 times the same day, and say, what are you going to do about it? That's what we're talking about. That's what this zone is about. So I'm saying to you, please extend this zone. It's not just about us, but it's about our community. It's about our elderly. It's about our homeless. It's about the inclusion of everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia Kokos is next, followed by John Monroe.
Cynthia Kokos, 2465 Jefferson Street. In February 2010, Churchwomen United of Lane County had a forum presentation. It was chosen because we have ongoing issues directed at the issues of homelessness and human trafficking, and we were looking at the downtown. The presentation there drew us to the conclusion that the ordinance was not something we wished to support. We felt that we knew that foster care for youth ends at 18, but we felt that 19, 20-year-olds, I know the ordinance is not supposed to direct itself at youth, but those young people also seem to us in that category, and often they were homeless because when foster care evaporated, there they were, and they were young. We had heard that Multnomah County had this practice, and they had abandoned it. We did not discern evidence that the policy succeeded, and apparently people are still asking for data. The fact that I saw somebody be treated pleasantly or I saw somebody be treated in an unpleasant way is not data. Mm-hmm. And the lens that we all look through life with varies to the person. In my family, we have homeless, low-income people who travel by bus. They do see things that I do not see. I go down to the library and I'm blithely going along. I do ride the bus. I'm not afraid when people of different abilities are on the bus, but I know that most people in my church, St. Mary's Episcopal, do not want to ride the bus because they're not accustomed to difference. They're not accustomed to low income. They're not accustomed to an awful lot of things. There seems to be an awful lot of fear, and I think it's unfamiliarity that gets us into that terrible place. I do believe it is unfair and discriminatory. I do believe it selects on how you look, and that look has a very deep relationship to poverty. I do believe that New York City was on the right track when they took back Central Park by occupying it. They said, we're not going to give up our park, we're going back to our park. And everybody went back. People from Fifth Avenue went back, people from First Avenue went back. They did not give it up. I think we want people to go back downtown. I agree. It is a problem with the parking. If I get involved at a restaurant, I find a ticket because I wasn't saying, oh, I've got to go out and feed the meter. I mean, I think there are solutions that are more about compassion than about rebuke and isolation. I live in a County, where today I sat down and read my message from Food for Lane County, 52% of our children are hungry. I am ashamed to be here. I would happily pay more taxes. I would get behind anything that you had. Let's have some conclusions that are more generous. Let's not be harassed. Let's have compassion.
Thank you. John Monroe is next, followed by Henry Jones.
John Monroe, 1760 Olive, Ward Number 1. I would like to address some of the comments that have been brought up by people in support of continuing the downtown exclusion zone, because it gives an opportunity for us to attempt to come to a more common dialogue instead of standing on opposite sides of the line and dealing with different pieces of information. As the lady that came up just before me correctly pointed out, personal experience is not equal to data. And in our researches so far into the supposed research proving the effectiveness of the downtown exclusion law, it's largely based on subjective opinion and incomplete statistical evidence. And we'd like to see the city continue to develop a more rigorous analysis of the situation rather than taking the opinions of certain individuals who may or may not have improved access to communicating to the government in the first place, and not all those individuals who largely have been excluded and fall under that 8% of people that are excluded, who do not have access to coming to city council, who do not because they're not allowed to, but because A, they're not informed, B, they don't feel comfortable, C, they're worried about reprisals, and D, they've been silent so many times they simply have given up. Now, we've had representatives come up here from the Chamber of Commerce, from the Midtown Business Association, and from Downtown Eugene Incorporated, as well as many other business owners, and they've brought up the very realistic problem of downtown public safety. And I admit this is a major problem, and I'm sad to hear that before the exclusion there were major issues for store owners and for businesses and for employees, and that the downtown exclusion has been perhaps effective in dealing with that. That being said, currently there are 6 bike police in downtown, 3 more to be scheduled this summer. There are the Red Cap patrols, and there are also security hired by the Midtown Business Association. If people are excluded, particularly chronic offenders, particularly violent offenders, and as one of the supporters pointed out, rapists who will be allowed out of jails, these people will be excluded to neighborhoods that most of the councilors on this council represent. And people will be pushed out there to residences which are far harder architecturally to monitor, in which there are far fewer people, law enforcement officers, etc., to monitor, and in which it's far more difficult for alternative programs like Cahoots to respond to. So if we're dealing with the public safety of Eugene, and not merely a percentage of that population, warranted though their concerns may be, we're going to be pushing out the population of truly violent people to a place where it's harder to patrol, where there are fewer members of law enforcement, and where there are families, children, schools, playgrounds, open parks, and other businesses that will also be susceptible to these people that we're so concerned about. Finally, I would recommend to every counselor and anyone that has said they have not seen cases of the misuse of this to go 9 o'clock in the morning to municipal court one day when a show cause hearing is being used to exclude someone, and tell me afterwards, or tell the city council, if you actually feel that this is being applied justly. Thank you.
Henry Jones is next, followed by Carla Newbray.
Yes, first to thank council for giving me some time here. Hi, Andrea, how you doing? Anyway, I'm out there in the Bethel area, and I've had both positive and negative experiences with the police over the year, and prefer to treat each one on an individual basis and how they treat me. I would like to refer to part of this article in the Saturday Register Guard. And it says that police argue that many criminal suspects are no longer held in the understaffed Lane County Jail, and so the exclusion law is all the more important. It says, and the supporters of the law say it enables police to quickly rid the area of troublemakers, since it can take months for a case to play out in court. Well, it seems to me that it seems wrong to use downtown as an adjunct to Lane County Jail. I mean, is this sort of becoming a de facto open area detention center, or an area where the law is sort of applied without due process and stuff, because it takes so long for these cases to go through court, because so many cases that are trivial, people brought in for trivial matters, are clogging up the courts, and so it takes such a long time. So there is a de facto non-due process taking place here and stuff. And people are being violated for their rights and for the way they look. We are in a class warfare situation. We have to decide what kind of a society we really want. Are we subjects or citizens? And there's a very important difference. A subject is somebody who is abused, used, pushed around, and otherwise manipulated by the dominant forces in this society who seem to have their own economic interests at heart. I believe it is patently wrong and unfair to use this exclusion ordinance as an economic tool for class warfare. And I believe that using the police in that manner is wrong, and it inhibits the jobs they should be doing, which is going after people who really are committing violent crimes. Just this last Saturday, I went over to the sports bar over on 99 and was inside the bar when a woman came in with a bloody nose and said that some guy had walked up to her outside and punched her in the nose. Well, it took the police 25 minutes to come out there. I said, if they cannot, report to an assault in a timely manner like that, are they busy downtown then dealing with the exclusion zone? Or is it to take 2 or 3 of them or 4 of them to stand over some homeless person because maybe they're in the wrong place at the wrong time because they're homeless and poor? It is not a crime to be poor in this country. And I submit to you that the exclusion zone is wrong. It is not adequate for what needs to be done. Maybe Whitebird should be allowed to get a place downtown and we can have a comprehensive sort of a care center where people can drop in during the day where they can be made to feel welcome. I, for one, do not shop downtown, and I'm going to tell all my friends, and all their friends are going to tell their friends not to shop downtown until you get rid of this ordinance. Thank you.
Carla Newber is next, followed by Mark Johnson.
Carla Newbury, I'm in Councilor Brown's ward. You know, if this ordinance were truly about reducing serious crime, I would have less of a problem with it. But because we don't have adequate statistics and because the reporting seems to be very polarized, a lot of people say, yes, it's really helped, and other people say, all it does is criminalize people who maybe shouldn't be criminalized. I have some really serious problems with this from a social justice standpoint, partly because of the statistics involved and partly because of the due process involved. That said, I think one of the things we need to keep in mind are the unintended consequences of this ordinance. You know, many of us here have been homeless at some time or other, and it may be easy to assume that because we were able to reverse our fortunes, that anyone can do that. It may be reasonable to assume that anyone can take advantage of the protections that are offered to prevent abuse or misapplication of these combined ordinances, and the justice will be served. This is not always the case. Chronic homelessness changes things. So does chronic disenfranchisement, so often experienced by youth and other marginalized populations. There is often a very real and severe impact on personal efficacy. The ability to advocate for oneself, the ability to use the legal system in one's own behalf. For many people who are homeless and suffering from multiple stressors, who are at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, who struggle with developmental delays, mental health issues, chemical dependency, and the like, for them, navigating a complex system to get their civil rights, civil liberties, and simple social justice things addressed, it may be the equivalent of climbing Mount Everest for them. Well, it's true that somebody who's charged with some of these crimes could go for advocacy to the police commission, the auditor, the human rights commission. People would have to know these resources exist and know how to access them. Not everybody does. Many of these resources are physically located within the exclusion zone. Sure, you can get a variance, but you have to go back to court. If you don't have access to transportation, if you're already overwhelmed by a system that it seems pretty much stacked against you to begin with, a lot of people just give up. You heard one gentleman say that he's afraid of reprisal. That's not unusual among people who are homeless, who are drug addicted, who are chemically dependent, who are mentally ill. The fear of reprisal and the sense of lack of power is huge for them. Please let this sunset and look for other ways. Look for diversion programs, mental health courts, alcohol and drug courts. There are better ways. This is not the way.
Mark Johnson is next, followed by Heather Merrick.
Good evening, and it's getting late, so I will be brief. And I'm Mark Johnson, 1320 Inglewood Avenue, Ward 5. I'm here tonight as a private citizen, but also speaking on behalf of LTD. LTD has been a public partner in safety downtown for years, and we put a significant amount of time and effort to ensure that we have a safe environment down there, and the exclusion zone has worked. It doesn't target homelessness, it doesn't target poverty, it targets criminals, and it's at least our area has been much better because of the exclusion zone, and I would encourage you to continue it at least 2 years. If you want to revisit every couple of years, fine. But it has been a useful tool, and I think with all the development and things going downtown, there's a lot of positive things happening down there. I think at this point to stop something that's working would be a horrible thing. So thanks.
Heather Merrick is next, followed by Cassandra Snowden.
Hi, I'm Heather Merrick, and I live in Ward 1 near the downtown, and I also work near the downtown on the border, a different border. Just observing, a lot of people here are speaking out against the ordinance, and I would be pretty surprised if it were extended, taking that into account. I've heard a lot of concerns about the police data provided, and actually I came prepared just to speak to that point alone, although I support a lot of the points that others are making regarding civil liberties and human rights. Based on a recent police report on the downtown public safety zone, I have two major concerns. One is the data that was provided, and the other is the analysis of the data. Regarding the data, the police do not provide any data on how exclusions are used or enforced. Their data fails to show any of the following: the race, gender, age, economic status, housing status, or mental health background of individuals who have been excluded. How can we know the impact of this policy on marginalized communities? The data does not show what crimes lead to exclusion, the severity of those crimes, or the frequency. How can we assess the safety threat of these individuals without this information? And I think this is pertinent because I hear many people making claims about how it's making the downtown safer, and it's only excluding the most dangerous and most awful people, the bad guys, I think is the term I hear a lot. But we don't actually know a lot about those guys to verify those claims. Also, regarding the police analysis, the data just cites overall crime trends, such as the offenses committed in the whole zone in general. In this data set, we see a decrease in certain property crimes, but an increase overall in arrests for victimless crimes such as curfew, disorderly conduct, and drugs. And we also see an increase in violent crime, including assault, robbery, weapons, and sex offenses. And so I'm curious whether this suggests to you that the downtown is indeed becoming safer. Taking this data into account, the police selectively choose which crime trends they would like to attribute to their presence in the downtown. This logic is flawed for three major reasons. First, it assumes a causal relationship between police presence and crime, a conclusion that criminologists have found to not necessarily be the case. Second, it is inconsistent in that it gives the police credit for only the crime trends that are favorable without an explanation for why. Third, it fails to take into account other societal factors that may influence crime, such as the economy, the Occupy homeless encampment, and social services.
Thank you. Cassandra Snowden is next, followed by Celeste Edmond.
Sandra Snowden, P.O. Box 5166, Eugene, Oregon 97401. I just want to say that the safety zone has been proven effective, and it is not discriminating against the homeless, people that are poor, based upon how they look. I know for a fact that me and my family, since the safety ordinance has went into effect, the harassment, everything that we were going through, all the violence has stopped. And I know for a fact that the whole downtown atmosphere has been a lot better. And I just think that getting rid of this, it's just going backwards. And all it's going to do is just reiterate to these offenders that well, we can go back down there, we can harass and do whatever it is we want to do. So I don't think that this ordinance needs to be gotten rid of. And also, once again, I'm going to reiterate what my mom said. When we were being harassed, called all sorts of racial names, not one time did we hear from the ACLU. And I think that's pretty interesting. Thank you.
Celeste Edmond is next, followed by Jesse Larkey.
Celeste Edmond, 315 Van Dyne. I should know my word, and I don't. Good evening, Madam Mayor, councilors. My husband and I own a small software business in downtown that employs 20 people. We also founded the Downtown Business Association, which represents over 50 small businesses, such as Saturday Market, Xenon, Passion Flower, and others. Our businesses have seen dramatic changes in downtown due in part to the downtown exclusion zone. We realize that this is only part of a much larger strategy that for downtown, and appreciate your vision as a city council in leading us to the positive momentum we currently have. We would not be experiencing this resurgence to our downtown core without your collaboration and leadership. As business owners and community members, we believe that safety is a key element to a bustling downtown. It's certainly not the only element, as I'm sure you're aware, but it's what I'm here to talk about tonight. Our group strongly supports the continuation of the downtown exclusion zone, but for reasons that may surprise you. We believe in freedom of speech and safety for all persons that choose to be in downtown. We believe that freedom of speech can range from holding signs, speaking publicly, asking for charity. We believe in the right of due process of all persons accused of a crime. What we do not support, however, are career criminals that prey on our businesses, our patrons, and the marginalized persons that may be homeless or hungry, who are all simply trying to share the downtown in peace. The target of this exclusion zone isn't the homeless or the marginalized. If it were, I would be speaking against it. If you doubt this, I ask you to review the exclusions that have happened in the last few years. In each case, those excluded are repeat and severe offenders. On their list of crimes are savage beatings, the sale of heroin and methamphetamines, and the solicitation of underage prostitution, crimes that have an acute human cost extracted from the homeless and the disenfranchised of this city. This zone is a rare example of something that's working exactly as it was intended. I don't believe the law violates due process. It's common all over our country for judges to restrict movement after arrest. Usually it's done to keep an arrested person within the jurisdiction of the court. Here it's being done to keep people from returning to their criminal operational base, to keep them away from the homeless and marginalized that are the targets of their crimes. So I ask you now, as your coworker, a community member, and a representative of over 50 small businesses that care for their employees and neighbors, homeless or not, please extend the downtown exclusion zone rule again for at least another 12 months. This zone protects more than buildings and assets. It protects people. Thank you.
Jesse Larkey is next, followed by Jim Welsh.
Jesse Larkey, Edison Street in the Bethel area. If the exclusion zone is a tool, it is too big a one, an oversized one. With a 90-day initial exclusion, it invites violation. You quickly move from the 90-day exclusion into the 1-year exclusion. These are long periods of time. We're talking about the exclusion zone as though if it's going to continue to exist, it has to exist as it was initially written and implemented. That doesn't have to be the case. If it is going to get extended, I hope it's going to be for a short period and that there will be a review of it to find out if it's the right thing. I submit that it's not, for a couple of the reasons I mentioned and others that we'll find when we review it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Welsh is next, followed by Mark Jordan.
Mayor Piercy and City Councilors, Jim Welsh, representing Eugene Association Realtors, 2139 Centennial Plaza, Eugene. Eugene Association of Realtors would like to express our support for the downtown public safety zone. Eugene Association has been long-time advocates of the safe community vision, a community where people feel safe, valued, and welcome. With the amount of new construction and new investment that has taken place in the downtown in the last year and the possibility of more in the future, downtown is becoming what we all supported and worked toward for some time. The public safety zone has helped reduce crime downtown and is an effective alternative to incarceration, and much needed with the budget challenges faced by Lane County, where increased jail capacity could eliminate the need for the zone. Furthermore, the zone has been continually assessed and improved by the Eugene Police Department and the City Manager's Office to assure that the program is fairly and effectively administered. Please consider authorizing the TPSZ for an extended period of time in order to continue this successful program until it is evident that the increased patrols downtown are effective and that there will be more available jail capacity. Thank you.
Mark Jordan is our final person this evening.
My name is Mark Jordan, 655 Good Pasture Island Road. I am alarmed by the Eugene City Ordinance on exclusion zones. I have two reasons for this alarm. First, as a licensed attorney practicing in Oregon, and second, as a Eugene resident. I feel this ordinance violates citizens' rights to freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, due process, and equal treatment and protection under the law. Therefore, Eugene City Council, I urge you to end this restriction on citizens' rights and let this ordinance expire. The constitutionality of similar ordinances has been successfully challenged in other places, and rightfully so. I urge the City of Eugene to protect the rights of its citizens at a level higher than a highly questionable and debatable standard that has been struck down as unconstitutional elsewhere, and thereby allow citizens to move about and gather freely when there is no determination that they are an immediate danger to society that requires their current incarceration. The Supreme Court has not ruled on this specific issue, but they have spoken to the general idea. I quote from Justin Owen Roberts in 1939, speaking for the majority in Hague versus CIO. Wherever the title of streets and parks may rest, they have immemorially been held in trust for the use of the public, and time out of mind have been used for purpose of assembly, communicating thoughts between citizens, and discussing public questions. Such use of the streets and public places has, from ancient times, been a part of the privileges, immunities, rights, and liberties of citizens. Thank you.
I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm going to make a couple of comments, and then I'm going to call on counselors. Thank you all very much for coming and speaking so eloquently about the things that you care so much about. My feeling from listening to you tonight is that we're all in this community together. And people on both positions have very legitimate and deeply held concerns. I just want to remind everybody that people up here are taxpayers too. And I think we're all interested, and I hope you listen to each other and maybe have the chance to talk more with each other, because I think that the desire is to be fair to everyone, our business owners, people who lived in our downtown, people who want to come into our downtown, you and me, all of us. And so we have to find some way here that isn't just about pointing fingers, but is, or I win or you lose. I think there has to be some way that we really try to stretch ourselves here and provide that safety that people need in our downtown, and provide that assurance that this is being used in a fair and just way. I don't have the answer. I'm listening hard. I think we're all listening hard. But I just encourage you to do some cross conversations yourselves. Okay, I'm going to call on Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with you. I think what you said was very reasonable. I agree with the sentiment and the word choice on all of that. I think everybody's trying to be reasonable and find some common ground to making sure that we continue to move ahead intelligently. We've done so for a couple of years now, and I think the progress is evident. For whatever reason, and I don't want to get into the process of talking about why, but we know from, I get to serve on the police commission, so I get to see the statistics on this. We know that crime increases in the summertime in the downtown area. We know that anecdotally as well. All the best information I have from the service on police commission and talking with the sheriff and the DA and everyone else is that you want about 1/5 of 1% of the population is about the number of jail beds I think you want in a community. That's the West Coast average of communities, so that one the size of ours should have a jail with the capacity of roughly 1,000 beds, maybe 1,100, something like that is a reasonable standard. And the chief would certainly have better numbers than I, but I think it's close to that. We had, for several years, a very anemic problem with our jail having the capacity of only about 370-some beds. We saw the details of what happens when we lose some, and 3 years ago we lost 84 at the county. And the chief's and the department's effort for data-led policing does a fantastic job of showing you the spike in crime that happened when we lost those 84 beds. We did that again at the beginning of this year, and we're starting to see the exact same result. So now we have 287 beds, whatever the number is, close to that, where we should have closer to 1,000. Next year, the county, unless something changes, the course we're on, within the next 6 months, will lose another 130. And we'll be down to 150. And that's the reality of, at just about a time when the summer will be on us, we have the possibility for a bad situation. And so I'd like to urge my colleagues to consider extending this, as the mayor mentioned previously, I think once, for a short time. Let's look at a reasonable sort of way to check back in with this, but I urge us, when time comes appropriate, to continue this. Thanks.
Councilor Ortiz.
My mute button's not working. I want to thank everybody for coming down. Can you hear it?
No, you're on.
Now I'm on? Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I did appreciate your words, and I really do appreciate people coming and sharing their thoughts and opinions. I've heard a lot of different ideas and different thoughts, and so I really just want to say that I'm just appreciative of folks coming out and sharing their opinions with us.
And Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks everybody for coming down. It's really good to hear all the points of view. I have looked at the statistics and I've listened to the reports, and I personally still don't see any logical correlation between the decreasing number of jail beds and any effectiveness of this downtown safety zone. Regarding the downtown area, I see no correlation whatsoever. I don't see any statistical correlation, and it is bad that we're losing the beds. We have to eventually, soon, figure out something to do about that. I agree with that. I do have a question for the chief, though. I don't see anyone from the courts here. My question was, oh, there you are. I see you. Thanks. One of the speakers, I think it was Mrs. Brown, said, quoted a statistic that I can't find in our packet, and she said that 12% of the ones that are excluded, they violate the exclusion order more than one time. I'll just assume that's correct. I don't know if it is or not. What happens when someone violates an exclusion order? Do they go to jail then? Is that the standard?
Yes, when they re-enter the zone, after they've been excluded, they'll be arrested for violating the exclusion ordinance, essentially trespassing, and placed in the jail.
Okay. I don't know if you have those statistics, but I don't think they were included in the material that
I
you
don't
got.
have them in front of me, but we can gather.
Are they available? Well, I'd like to. I think that maybe council should see those before we vote next week. I'd like to see them anyway. Thank you.
Councilor Zelenka.
Just a couple of requests for information from staff for the meeting on the 27th. Some of them were holdovers from the last time we had a conversation about this. 19% of the, according to the statistics, 19% of the folks who were looked at were either denied or dismissed and we were going to characterize those better so we could find out what was going on there. There was numerous reasons for that, and they said you'd get information back to us. I'm wondering if you can tell us what percentage of the people that were excluded were homeless. I'm wondering if you could, along the lines of what Councilor Brown was talking about, wonder if you could characterize the people that were excluded. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence that these are repeat offenders, career criminals, but we don't have any data to support that or not support that. I'm wondering if we can get a better characterization of that. And then finally, one of the things that we talked about last time was that the advocacy programs and ideas about making that a better program and more effective. Right now it doesn't work, I think, at all. And so we need to make that a more effective program. I'd like to see some ideas about how that can be done.
Councilor Taylor.
Thank you. I see we're out of time, but I want to thank everyone who came, and people were so eloquent that I really want to find time to listen to all this again. It was really, we have some very talented and intelligent people. I think there is, I do not favor the exclusion zone. That's well known. I didn't favor it in the beginning, and I still don't. I think there's a logical fallacy in saying things are better now since then, a fallacy of thinking because something happens after something happened that the first thing is the cause, which is not, and there's been an increase in police presence. There have been other things that may have reduced crime. But another big thing is people have to be somewhere, as some of you pointed out. They aren't going to disappear unless we're going to start killing people. And I think it's a very good point that it's better to have people in a central place where there are more people and more police presence. And another thing I have a problem with logically is that there's no room for them in jail, but if they violate the exclusion order, then they can go to jail. So I don't know where the room came from at that point. And that's, everyone has said everything so well. I don't need to say any more. Thank you.
Councilor Brown.
Thanks, Mayor. I just had one more question for Chief Kearns. I seem to remember 2 or 3 months ago when we were discussing this at council or work session, I believe one of the councilors, it might have been me, but I can't really remember who it was. We're seeing the data from 05 to 08 before the exclusion ordinance went into effect, and then from 08 through 011, so 2-3 year periods. And somebody requested, could we see that same set of data, but from, say, this was just for the downtown zone, say from Whitaker, and another set of data like that from West University. So we could see, was there a spike in those areas because people were being excluded but not jailed from downtown? I think that was the point of asking for that data, to see if there was, some logical correlation between those, the phenomena, the data could show a trend.
We did do that, actually.
You did do that? Did you?
2 years ago, not for this particular
I see.
analysis, so we can see if we can
if
pull those together.
I think at some point people should see that, and if it could be done before we vote, that would be great. And I realize that you're busy, and we're voting next week. So, but if there's any way possible, I'd like to see it before the vote, and if not, afterwards would be good. I think it'd be just another way to look at it, an analytical tool.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilor Farr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Woosman stated that Councilor Zelenka gave his usual city council reports mentioning that 24% of the cases were dismissed or found innocent. 24 is the number that was stated. The other statement was 93% by Ms. Brown, 93% were innocent of the charge or had the charges dismissed, or were found guilty of the charge or had, were found guilty of the charge. So 24% stated by Mr. Woosman via Ellen Zelenka, or 93% stated by Ms. Brown. I'm kind of confused there.
Apparently, about 20%, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% of the exclusions that were requested by officers were not granted by judges. Out of the 136, well, 136 were granted, but of the total number requested, some 20% were not granted by judges. And the reasons for those range, and that was the information that Councilor Zelenka was just asking for. The reasons for those range from administrative. Sometimes the report didn't arrive at the court in time for the judge to make a determination, so the judge dismissed it. Or some of it was a vetting that was done by the prosecutor who decided on it independently that the request by the police officer wasn't worthy of an exclusion. And some of those were the determination of a judge after viewing the evidence decided that an exclusion wasn't appropriate.
Okay, so we're not talking about errors by the police necessarily. We're talking about a variety of things that cause 24%, I believe was the number that was stated.
Yes, but I think it's 19.
24 was stated, I think.
Yes, that's correct. That was what was said, but I think the actual figure is about 20.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're ready to wrap it up. Okay, Alan?
Just for the record, the statistics in the report are 19%. That's the total of those that were denied and those that were dismissed. I think it was 12 and 7%. So it's 19, not 24.
So my plea to everybody is this could just head down the road into a discussion about whose whatever is going to be gored. Ox is going to be gored. It is late. My biggest concern is that we kind of try to tease out all these issues and do the best we can with all of them for our community, and that is for all of us. So the discussion of the public safety zone is a way to be talking about a lot of issues that are of concern to us all, and they will be very difficult to address. We have the homeless committee that's meeting this week, wrestling with some of those things. So this is not easy. I just encourage you the best I can to not use this as a way to think the worst of people. That I think that people are coming to this with very good intentions from both points of view and really deep concern for the community. And I really hope you'll hold on to that as you have these conversations and as council does, and we try to get to a better place on this, that we all have some satisfaction with what we end up with. Thank you all very much.